Hi, my name is Krég Freiser from Cal Concepts Air Syndicate, and I'm here to introduce the new video in the Skullmaster series, Mastering Skullmaster Part 2. We're working with Curse's Skullmaster in this video, so let's get to painting. For this demo, we're going to be using the Wada HPCH airbrush. It's an excellent airbrush for fine detail spraying, but also does good medium work. Besides the standard double action that you're going to have with most Wada airbrushes, we also have a little adjustment here, so I can dial down the pressure real low, so I don't have to mess with my regulator at the tank. Dial this pressure down when I do my details. As far as the paint, we're going to be using some House of Color paint today. This is a candy. I've combined KK17, which is a violet, and KK04, which is an oriental blue, together with an intercoat clear and create a nice transparent blue-violet. The reason I'm using violet in this is violet's kind of a funky color in the fact that you can layer it many times and get darker and darker with it. At the same time, be very light and subtle and have soft shading, unlike black, which gets black very fast. That way I can build up a lot of soft, subtle tones as well as a lot of depth and definition. With the stencil moved over halfway, I'm going to come in with my violet. And you can just hold it down just lightly with your fingers. And I'm not going to spray really, really dark on this. The reason being is I'm going to come in, I'm going to freehand some of this. I will hit the eyes dark though. Go and find the eyes and hit those. Saves you a little bit of time later on coming in and freehanding those in. So if I come and lift this stencil, you can see the design stuff. Now I kind of faded out. If you wonder why I didn't go all the way to the top, because these skulls get very small up towards the top, and I may want to add more skulls and have them taper off slowly to the top. I'm going to come in with the other side here, and I'll show you how you can kind of combine and move things around. I'm going to tilt this skull in here a little bit. I like it this way, a little bit more than the other. And I'm going to kind of patchwork in or fill in this design here. Not laid out like I did this one. So I laid that one skull there. I can come in and use the same skull again, or what you can also do, if the paint's dry, nice thing about this urethane, it dries very fast, I can flip it around, and this skull, even though we used it right here, looks totally different when it's backwards. You don't really even notice it's the same one. And I'll kind of fill that one in there, hit the eyes, hit the nose. Now if I'm doing this on someone's flames for their vehicle, it goes very fast with the larger gun. I go over and just move this around with pearls, and over a set of flames on an entire car that's already masked off, you'll spend maybe 15-20 minutes using this stencil to fill in these type of skulls. I'll charge anywhere from $200 to $500 more to add something like that in the flames, because when it's all done, it's all in mass, it looks very detailed, like you spend a lot of time on it. If I'm going to come in and freehand it, I'll charge even more. Notice I'm still playing that patchwork with the skulls, kind of filling them in. I do this for a couple of reasons. If you lay them all out normally according to like a grid with this stencil, it's going to look like a stencil. This way, a person has a hard time seeing where one stencil ended and the other one began. Now I really like this guy here because of his jaw line. It's kind of cool looking. I'm going to tilt him a little bit. You always kind of pull back. This is transparent, but the more color gets on it, it gets harder to see. There we go. Let's get him in here. Darken up his eyes. Get this one, and then we can kind of do some what I call noise, a little bit of detail up in there. Now look at this, we have a whole pile of skulls all kind of looking in different directions, and it's hard to tell where the stencil ended and began. You can almost see a little bit of a path in here, but when you come in and freehand, you're going to lose that. Now, at this point, we're done with this one stencil. We're going to set it aside, and then I'm going to show you how you combine a freehand technique with this to really punch the details out, but not spend a lot of time. So it's going to have a really cool looking skull landscape. What I'm doing now is I'm establishing like what's light and dark in a certain area. This skull's behind this one, so he gets a little bit of an added shadow in there. Let's outline his teeth just a little bit. Give him a little bit of an outline. The stencil's the teeth are kind of disconnected. I mentioned this in the original stencil video, the first one, because the way stencils are designed, if you had every line connected, the dang thing would fall apart on you. It's kind of a nightmare. So designing stencils, you've got to creatively figure out where you're going to have certain things attached and where they're going to be disconnected. Put a little shadow between his eyes there, kind of. We're going to make him a little bit ticked off. Add an instant eyebrow. And let's come in here and let's outline his teeth as well. What we're doing is, besides detailing and adding depth, adding some personality, we're also taking out the stencil. We're eliminating that stencil-y look to the piece. Kind of giving a little bit more of a freehand feel. Add a couple little dagger strokes in here. Now, let's see how these eyes are real light here. Let's say you want to come in and darken them up, but you're afraid of like fuzzying them out. You can grab the original stencil, line that sucker back up again really quick, and hammer in that nose and maybe a little bit extra shadow in the eyes. Put the stencil back again. The nice thing about stencils is no matter what you do, it's not going to change. Now, am I going to go in here and go completely nuts and really detail freak this thing out? It depends. Depends on the client, depends on the job I'm doing. For this one, I'm mostly detailing the bigger skulls. Now, granted, I did a whole lot of big skulls in here. Smaller ones don't really need it as much because they're smaller. They're not as detailed. You want to outline all the teeth because the teeth do have a stencily look on all of these. And I am giving that a shadow behind these skulls. Like this one back here is getting more of a shadow. So anytime you shadow something, you don't have to detail it as much. Again, to get some real tight detail, you can always pop the cap off the airbrush. Now this airbrush actually does not spray any finer with the cap off, but it allows you to get closer for those really thin details. You should be aware of where your tape's at. I'm making the edges darker because when I unmask this, I don't want any white to mess with my design. I want the design to be the darkest part of this piece. So use your shadowing to also border your piece. Shade and shadow here. Again, don't go too crazy. We're going to do all this killer freehand all over it. It kind of eliminates the need for the stencil. Stencil gives you the ability of doing this over a large scale area and keeping a continuity. Nothing worse than doing skulls all over a whole vehicle only to find out at the end of the day one side of the car looks better than the other because you're getting better at it or you're getting more tired and it doesn't look as good later on. Stencils give you that little continuity. And just remember, stencils are a tool. Biggest mistake people make is think, oh, stencils are for beginners. Stencils are for babies. Well, I said it in the other video, I'll say it again. Stencils are, if you can only use a stencil to airbrush, you are a remedial airbrush artist. Nothing wrong with that. You have nowhere to go but up. Stencils help you get the job done. Now, if you are an expert airbrush artist and you feel that stencils are beneath you because they're for beginners and babies, well, when you're approached by a big old job like I was, like Jesse James doing his trailer, and I had to do a bunch of skulls on the side of it. If you're going to do 1,000 skulls on the side of a trailer, and you have to get it done in like a day, and you don't want to use a stencil, well, you're stupid. You're going to go out of business. Right tool for the right job. Again, detailing out these teeth. Just keep working my way along. Okay, as you see, I'm still just using the same colors, this transparent violet, but the more I build up, the darker and darker and darker it gets until it literally can become black if you add too much of it on there. If you look at this area up in here, it's not fully completed, but if you were doing like a pearlescent effect in a graphic and just spraying a light pearl through the stencil, this would give a really cool effect because you look at it and it would look like a marbleizing or modeling from a distance, and you get up close to it, people say, oh look, cool, there's skulls in there. And whereas this is pretty blatant that it skulls all the detailing. You could even combine the two and do like a pearl stencil effect, then freehand in with a candy, and that way you'll have a flip-flop between the pearl shifting in different angles of light and then the details that are pretty much going to be anchored in the whole time. Both techniques are viable, done together or by themselves, all with the exact same stencil, same tool. Now everyone has different abilities at freehand skills, and even someone that is very good at freehand, he may not opt to spend a lot of freehand time on a particular job. I don't eliminate certain jobs because some guy comes to me, wants some skulls in his car, but doesn't want to spend the amount of money to do them all freehand. Oh yeah, well, you give him different levels of detail. We're not going to give him like a bad job because he doesn't pay the money, but there's certain levels of detail that are acceptable. There's also things called implied detail where you can be real subtle with your shade and shadowing. You don't have to do as much work. And I get a lot of questions from students like, well, when do you know is enough? Well, when you're working on a semi-tractor trailer, common sense will tell you when enough is enough when you're doing detail work. You start working on something and you realize, I'm going to be here for like 10 days. You may want to rethink the job on the level of your detail or how you're doing it. You never ever want to give less quality, but you may give less quantity. Quantity of detail is not a quality issue. whether someone wants 20 skulls or 5 skulls, they give them the same quality. The quantity is what changes. And this one's kind of hard to see because I went between 2 different parts of the stencil, so I'm going to have to ad-lib a little bit here. That's where some of your freehand skills come into play. I'll add a little bit more violet in here to make it darker so it's spitting a little bit more, but I'll actually work with that. Even though it spits, I'll just clear the airbrush out every now and then because I want it to be darker. Too subtle and it takes too long to layer. And if I was using an opaque color, it would go very fast, but I wouldn't get the subtle shading either. It's like a give or take, you know. You want one, you don't get the benefit of the other. Build up a lot of shadow behind that skull there. Let's build some eyebrows, some texturing. Kind of go in this break in the skull and make some lines. You can also create what I call graphic noise. You say, what the heck is graphic noise? Well, you can come into a design like this one right here, which is fairly subtle looking. You can come in and do a bunch of little squiggly lines. It looks like a mess at first, but you're looking at it, and these little squiggly lines give a texture, a textural quality to all these skulls. I can go through all these skulls, these little bitty squiggly lines, and it actually ages them. People don't look and say, oh, what are those little lines all over them? You automatically assume it's either old cobwebs, dirt, scratches. You do a bunch of them, when you do too many, it's solid black, it doesn't look like anything. But a little bit of that kind of graphic noise, it's kind of cool looking. Implied detail makes you look like you did a lot more work than you did. This is not cheating, by the way. Customizing is perceived reality. The successful custom painters are the ones that actually probably figure out a way of doing an effect that anyone else would think would take 3 days, and they figure out how to do it in 3 hours. Stencils are one of those tricks. Is it the only trick? No. Do I use stencils all the time in my shop? No. But I will say I use them almost every day. And not all of my stencils. Some of the ones that I'll just make stencils for a specific job. But I do use all the stencils I have made. They're all modified versions of things I actually use in my shop. And I take the ones that I've made through Art Tool and I modify them too. I'll cut them here, cut them there. You look at this looks a heck of a lot better than just some old stencil. I mean, you look at the difference between this and this right now. You can combine this over larger areas and you'll be able to convince anyone it's freehand. Matter of fact, it is pretty much freehand. I spent much more time freehand airbrushing than I did stenciling. Nice thing about this, like I mentioned before, gives you a good reference point, whether you're professional or a beginner for doing skulls. Let's say you want to do a pile of skulls on both sides of a Harley tank, exactly the same. You can spend forever measuring or stencil time. In this case, what I'm going to show you is, I'm going to pull this tape off. You see this ugly overspray here. Let's pull this masking tape back. See the clean edge I got right there, and looks a heck of a lot better when you look at a clean edge than if you look at just tape. Now what I'm going to do with my tape is I'm going to actually mask off this, mask these 2 sections here, and show how you can create, using the same stencil, a border system. Now what I'm going to do here is a very light interpretation of the stencil, leaving this dark detailed area here, and I'm not going to detail these sides to show you can actually use it as a contrasting graphic, one stencil for 2 different jobs. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to mimic the width that I had here on this side to show the exact same effect on this side. And another piece of tape right here. It's 233 automotive masking tape. Make sure you don't get that real cheap stuff. You know, the stuff you find at like your local hardware store. It says like Barrel O tape. As many as you can grab in an hour for $1. Those are not really good brands of tape. Matter of fact, your local Home Depot and some of the hardware stores have actual good quality tape. 233 is the number. Now, if you're looking for the number on the tape, don't know where to find it, pick the tape up right there. On the inside it says 233. It doesn't matter if this is 3/4 inch, 2 inch, or 4 inch tape. Now, using the same stencil, you may wonder, oh, you didn't mask off the centerpiece. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to let my overspray get over into there. I'm going to use these tight skulls, the ones I didn't use a lot of. I use some of the bigger ones. I'm going to come in and just fog my design in like that, and then bring in a couple more over here. Maybe jumble them around so these are sideways. You need to have them any specific way. I actually keep on going down with them all sideways like that. And you can do the same thing over here. Come in, let's rotate this a little bit. Stop before I get to the big skulls. So, oh, I got a couple big skulls in there. Oh, big deal. I have one big skull right in there. So I just blend them all in together. Just ran out of paint real quick. See the beauty of a top feed gun. Squirt a little bit of paint in the top, pop the cap back on, ready to roll that fast. And let's bring some of these little suckers in here on the bottom and just give a light fog so that when I unmask it, you'll see it. Now, when I pull the tape now on this, you're going to see how we have our cool, detailed skull design in the middle. And if this was on a vehicle, you could roll this as a side graphic. I've done this on the sides of cars and graphics or on the roofs of a car. If anyone remembers the old school look of lace, when you'd take lace and lay it over a car, spray candy or flake or pearl on it, and you get that real funky looking pattern from a distance. You come up close, you go, oh, it's like it's grandma's tablecloth or something. This looks like that. From a distance, you look at this and people say, oh, look, it's that old school lace effect. They come up close and it's not lame like a doily, it's actually skulls. It's kind of funky looking. Some people look from a distance, think it's paisley pattern. So using that same stencil, one stencil, we're able to create a base for our detail skulls. At the same time, create a really cool, funky pattern here. We could do it inside of flames. We could do this underneath candies as an underpainting. We could do it in pearls on top. You could even do candies on top of flake with this, like I did on a number of vehicles. You come in with black on top of flake and then spray candy on top of that. Stencils really, there's no end to them. Probably covered a lot of time with this one stencil, mainly because this stencil is my favorite out of this series, and probably the one I use absolutely the most for a lot of my what I call skull landscapes or murals that incorporate lots of skulls. Moving right along, we're going to go to the next stencil. This one's called Buccaneer, and hence pieces of 8 pirates' heads, Jolly Roger flag, little compass thing down here. Definitely a stylized stencil. I got this from so many people requesting this style of skulls and pieces of 8 that I was doing a lot of my pirate ship murals that I went through my pirate ship phase, I guess you could call it. Plus it came out at the same time Pirates of the Caribbean did, so we had like a nice little boost from Johnny Depp and everyone, so that was kind of cool. Very, very cool little stencil. People really are having a great time using it. I've seen it used a lot of different ways, especially the pieces of 8. If you have like piles of money, no matter what kind of mural, pirate ship or gangster, whatever, the little coins are definitely save you a lot of time. What we're going to do here is I'm going to show you how, if you look at this stencil, it's like, well, unlike the skull stencil I showed you before, the bones too, you don't spray this all like it is right here. It doesn't make any sense. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to mask off different sections. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create like a pile of money. Then we're going to come along and probably put a Jolly Roger flag come out of the pile of money and maybe have this skull off to one side and this off to another. And then we'll have the compass heading up. We'll basically create a little mini mural using these. These are all individual elements. Now they are close together, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to mask off areas in here to keep overspray from going to the next one, which is common in many of my stencils. We made almost all the stencils the same size so they'll fit very easily into like a folder and you won't be folding them over. Let me get some tape out. We're going to mask off a couple of areas and we'll get right to spraying. Okay, got some artist tape here. You can use normal masking tape. Since I'm going to be doing these coins, I don't want my compass piece to be sprayed through. I don't want my Jolly Roger to come out. Don't want this pirate guy to be popping up since he's not needed right now, or this guy. So I'm going to mask those off. Now I'm not masking them completely off, and I'm going to put a little bit on the edge so I don't get this line on the side of my coins. Now it's not a pretty job, but I don't clear coat masking tape and leave it on the job. It's just there for a purpose. Now the tape, besides keeping the areas masked off, it'll also stick to my surface, allowing hands-free airbrushing. So let's go ahead and put this on our surface and get to it. Okay, I don't want to get any airbrushing or pieces of 8 or Buccaneer stuff into my skulls, so we're going to mask this part off. Dull your tape real good. Do it on my shirt, and that'll keep the tape from sticking too much to the paint. Leave a little bit peeking through, that way you don't end up with that white ghost line. I'm not paranoid about overspray at this point. I'm keeping it pretty tight in here. If you're spraying with a gun, oh yeah, masking paper that sucker off. Now I know I'm going to come in with another stencil and do a couple things up here. This is where you need spatial awareness. I'm going to be working from here down, and I'm just going to make my little pile of money right down here. I'm going to start out by just hitting these coins. Now I can move them around to get them closer to one another. You can move them and reposition them. That's the nice thing about having this thing transparent. See how it looks like one coin's behind the other there? And let me see, you can also spin them around. Don't feel shy about moving your stencils around to accommodate your design. Notice how I'm aiming the airbrush away from the tape. Added insurance for those delightful overspray problems. And then I come in and with the areas I can still see through there, I kind of fill in the gaps. Now I want to have a couple of these big coins, besides the fact that they fill up your area nicely, they look kind of cool. And don't make them all round, have a couple angled ones in there. Make them all round look kind of weird. Notice I'm spinning this around a lot. Getting different angles. I don't want this to look like a standard stencil. I gave a bunch of different coins for you guys to use in this, so use them. Don't feel shy. Now, when this looks really, really cool, is imagine laying gold leaf on a car in a pile, then coming in with black and doing this in black, and then you can render in coins all over the gold leaf. And all of a sudden you get gold coins. It's like, oh man, did you have to lay every single coin in there? It's like, you know, if it's a client, you say, of course, that's why you're paying me that much money. If it's another painter, you say, yes, because you don't know how I did it. So it's a secret. Of course, you all know it, but hey, you bought my video. And we have like just this roundy pile of coins going on here. Now, before I start rendering this or detailing it out, I want to get my Jolly Roger up in here, my flag. Some pirate put a big flag on top of his pile of coins, so I want to know it was his. And so as not to waste any tape, I'm going to take the exact same tape I just put on here and just reposition it. Now I'm masking off the coins to keep them away from my flag design, which is right here. Make sure I didn't get anything on that one, yeah. And the flag design, we'll kind of have it like I'll make a little sword that's coming off the side here and have that flag floating right there. Hold the stencil down. If you let the stencil lift, I actually will let my stencil lift to create a softer look, because then the paint can blow underneath. And I don't really want that right now. I want to keep this kind of tight. Now I'm going to finish lining this design out myself. See there? We got our Jolly Roger flag. It's going to be coming out of the pile of coins. And what about the pirate? Put the flag there. Let's put his head down here somewhere. There we go. And we're just going to detail him in. Let's get him a nice solid black eye patch. And be careful. I'm going to put, see, I can see the coins through here. I'm going to put my finger, my thumb over that coin. And my thumb over that coin. If you don't like getting paint on your fingers, use rubber gloves. See, that way, looks like it's behind the coins. A little bit of overspray gets in, but that's not going to kill anybody. I'll actually make it look like there's a bigger flag floating right back in here with this image on it. So what about the coins? Now I'm aiming downward. Aim up to get rid of that angle. Watch out for that edge. Let's see how that one looks. I got a little bit of edge there. Sometimes that overspray will wipe off. And I'm going to do a little freehanding with this. Not as much as with the skulls, but enough to like give it some semblance of order, since it looks kind of like someone grabbed a stencil and just sprayed all over the place. Now I'm going to come in and render my coins. I'm going to do this just by shadowing underneath and in between some, connecting some of the lines. Because remember, those stencils aren't all connected. Now this can take some time, so you don't want to go too crazy with it. Try and not color your coins. Color the areas your coins aren't in. Or if you have one coin going over another coin, create a shadow over that coin. Bring as much reality as you can into this. I also jump around a lot when I'm doing this kind of stuff. If you find yourself getting bored, like say you have a car full of coins, and that's like really dull, man, find something else to do in the meantime. You'll do a couple coins, come back to it. Otherwise, it is going to look like you hate that part of the car. And you can come in with the stencil and spray a couple more little lines. There's a couple little bitty coins I like in this stencil, and I'll use them in the background of these shades and shadows to kind of give some extra texture. See, it just kind of darkens up some of those areas in there. I'm just going to kind of come up. I've been looking at this flag. I want to connect the flag. So I'm going to do a long flagpole, which is just a long single line here. Connect that one coin there. I'm going to make it look like it's tied off there. And the first thing I do with this flag is I'm going to connect it. I was connect the lines. Remember, it's a stencil. Your lines aren't connected. Connect those bad boys. Like I say, when working with stencils or just rendering in general, first thing you want to do is delineate the piece. After it's stenciled, delineate it. Get it all lined out. Then you want to separate it, either with depth, like we did here, or by pushing and pulling, dark to push back, light to come forward. You want to separate it from the background. Then you want to define it and do your shade and shadowing. So delineate it, separate it, and then worry about your shading and shadowing. So I'm not going to darken up the background on this one, but I am going to darken some shadows to show that this area behind the flag is in shadow. So this area. I'm going to detail up my little skull here some. Give him some eyebrows, tick him off. He's mad. A couple little darker lines on the side to show it curves. But not too dark, because you're going to make it darker back here to show a little bit of a cast shadow. Remember that graphic noise we did before with the lines? Oh man, this is begging for it on the flag. A lot of line work. Before you know it, you've got a nice looking flag there. Doesn't look like it was stenciled at all. Now we do have this piece right here. Looks like a big Jolly Roger floating in the middle of nowhere. Well, let's go ahead and do a flag for him too, but we're gonna have this one come along like this. A background, so it's like a Jolly Roger in the background there. I'm just trying to, it has nothing to do with the stencil right here. This is just trying to kind of connect the images together. Plus it'll give us some separation. Gives flow to the piece. And then come along and create some gouges in the flag. Make it look like it ends right back here behind this one skull. Some loose threads. Make it look like it's kind of thrashed. And now that I've had fun playing with my flags and my skull up there, I'm going to come down here and do some more of the boring coin work. After you get finished doing a couple of flags that aren't boring and they get boring, guess what? The coins are fun again. I have a very short attention span, and I could either turn around and cry about it and not get anything done, or I could do something about it. And what I do is I just change things up. I discovered something a long time ago that I could work on 5 projects simultaneously. And the same time it took me to do 3 back to back, because half the time I'd be staring at them, mumbling things about how much I hated the project or something, or was sick of this, blah, blah, blah. Get tired, get bored. At least I do. Let's come in and fix up our captain. Let's darken him up a bit. He's not really showing up hardly. Let's delineate him first. Draw him out. Finish that line. Connect his hat right there. And let's kind of connect his skull while we're at it. I had someone use this stencil, actually I've had people use these stencils in very interesting ways. I always make jokes when I write the columns up on the stencils about people using them in wedding cakes or whatever. I don't know, maybe people have, but I had someone actually use them as a tattoo. They brought it into the tattoo artist, and the tattoo artist used the stencil as the basis of a tattoo, which is kind of funny. What I thought was interesting is the guy tattooed it like a stencil. That kind of baffled me, but it looked bitchin' on him. These things have a lot of uses. I've done wall murals where I had to have a little bit of detail stuff. I've had a lot of faux finishers, especially with this one. Kids' rooms, since Pirates of the Caribbean came out, faux finishing and doing borders with the coins and the skulls. Just real simple stuff. And they weren't using an airbrush, they're using a sponge. And sponge painting through the stencil on a border. Now I thought it was kind of interesting. Kind of a Martha Stewart thing. I'm going to darken this hat up a bit more. Connecting all these lines here is important. It gives it continuity and it takes away that stencil. First thing you want to do with the stencil, unless you want people to know it's a stencil and you're going for that effect, get rid of the stencil. Delineate that sucker. And here I'm just going to add some stains and little marks. Let's say you want to darken up those eyes a little bit. Just grab your stencil. Bring it back in here, line it back up again. The cool thing about it, no matter how many times you use it, unless you like destroy it with a pair of scissors or something, it's going to be the same stencil. Just darken it back up. No problem at all. Of course, you could line it up better than I did there, but man, now it has almost like the 3D glasses look, a little bit out of focus. Now it looks like it's much more part of that flag in there. While the flag, I've got the flag kind of coming down here. It doesn't really do much. Let's do something with the flag in the background. Continue the flag over to this other side. Called continuity. I know this isn't part of the stencil video. Okay, this is a bonus footage. How to do a flag. It's just a freehand flag. Nothing to write home about. Just a little something that kind of ties in the continuity of that furling piece of material there. Remember the little north, south, east, west guy? We'll stick him right here to kind of give it the nice pirate map look. Now, if you're doing something that looks like a pirate map, this is kind of cool. It's kind of it's a compass heading type design. I've done this where I actually used it with sizing glue and then laid in leaf on it to give it a real cool effect. In this case, I'm just going to connect the lines on the letters to take out that stencil look, finish the skull. Now you could enhance that unfinished stencil look and make it look eroded. So it's only a very small difference. I'm going to make it kind of look eroded. I kind of like that look. Very small fine line between a stencil that's not connected and something that's thrashed and eroded looking. And do a little shadow of the design behind it. A little sense of depth here. I'm not doing a complete shadow. I'm not going to spend that much time, but and you can kind of give a little halo effect behind it. Literally all the components used in the stencil all combine here in a nice collage with a little bit of freehanding to tie it all in and clean it all up. Here's another stencil I have a lot of fun with. This one's called Evil Horde. It basically was a whole bunch of different skulls I had that I didn't have any one theme going, so I crammed them all on this, and I mean, the theme is skulls. Right here, we're gonna only use half of this stencil on this white board back here because the bottom half, or this kind of horn skull here, looks really good on a black board using white, working more from the negative than the positive. So we're gonna, since we got a nice little space up here on this board, we're gonna go ahead and use these two skulls up here on what little of the board we have left over here and kind of create, finish up our skull collage going on here. I'm gonna mask off the top edge because we're real close up here on that one. And let's mask off the sides while we're at it. What the heck? Now I'm gonna do one skull at a time. I'll do this one on the left side and this one on the right side. I'm not gonna mask between them. It's not that, they're not that close. I'm gonna mask the bottom guy off. And there's this little dude in the middle, little like king skull. Well, he's done. Mask him off and get him out of the picture. Let's lay it on here. Probably kind of hard for you guys to see since it's not painted on yet. Make sure I'm not going over anything underneath. And let the tape hold it down for itself. I'm going to do this one here first and slide over a little bit for this one. This skull right here is a frontal facing skull, and if you notice, you see a lot of open areas on one side and not too much on the other. It makes it look like there's more light hitting this side of the skull and this area over here is darker. I'm going to darken it up really good in the eye section. When I do the side here, I'm aiming away from this skull. I don't want any overspray to get on there because I'm not placing him right there. Aim upward on these parts. Let's make the crack really dark up here and really darken that eye socket. What you can do sometimes on these, I'm blowing air to make it dry faster. Sometimes I'll come in and I'll do the outside edge and leave the center alone. See how it looks like it's lighter in the middle? It gives a real creepy, almost like there's a dim eye staring out at you. Now in this area, this is the dark area of the mouth. The shadow in the mouth. I really want it to be black. Not black, it's purple, but you know what I mean. I'm going to make it real dark. This side is darker than that side. And there we go. Let's yank her and see if we have any overspray messing us up. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Now what I'm going to detail is it's a minimalistic skull. You don't want to really kill that real minimalism look. So I'm not going to really line out this side as much as this side is, because this is the side in shadow. So I'm going to come in over here and shade and shadow this side of the skull and leave this side alone. I might come in a little bit and connect a few of the lines so it doesn't look stencily. You say, oh, he's airbrushing on the wrong side. No, no, no. I want a little bit of shadow to show where that cheekbone is underneath there. And let's define these teeth a little bit like we did with the other skulls. Give a couple of dagger strokes, come up in the middle. define these bottom teeth. Don't be afraid to get the dark side dark. And let's kind of give some streaks and shades on these cracks to make them look real eroded. Got a little spitting on my airbrush, that's cool. I want the airbrush to be spraying dark right now, so I'll deal with a little spitting. Spray it off the side. Class, I mean, what are you going to get? A little spitting on your skull? It's like, oh, I got some paint spit on my skull. It's a mess now. The skull's supposed to be thrash looking. I'm softening up that hard edge from the stencil, but I don't want to take away from it. I want to leave it there. It's my foundation. Maybe give a couple of added streaks, some added, like this thing's really thrashed. Maybe give some little cobwebs hanging down from the jaw. There's a real creep show look to it. And a little bit of a halo. Just so when I unmask this, I'll have a little bit of a border going on with this piece. You can softly halo this eye socket here so you have a little bit of that glow going on. While I darken this one up even more. Careful not to get too wet. You don't want any runs or any sags going on in there. Hey, remember that graphic noise we did before? Hey, let's add some to him, some crisscrossing. See, a little bit of freehanding, that thing just has a real cool, creepy look to it. This is an excellent skull that could be used if you have a bunch of piles of skulls, even these skulls over here. You got these skulls going on in the background of something, you want there to be a main character skull. This style ties in really well with this, enough that you could have this be like the centerpiece with all these around it. This one's looking at you. If you ever notice, not a single one of these skulls, except for this little weirdo here, is looking really right at you. None of the main skulls are kind of off to the side or whatever. This guy right here, he's staring directly at you with his mouth open. So this is like a main character skull, main element. Great for like the front of a helmet or the back of a helmet or even the side of a tank or just the centerpiece of a design. You have a Maltese cross or an ace of spades or whatever. These, what I call centerpiece designs, can be used tons of different ways. You can use them as collages where they're over and over and over again the same skull with the one in the middle detailed, all the ones on the outside just real faint. You could come in and use the same stencil like this and faintly just go back over in different areas around it. Kind of gives it a creepy look. If you have the same thing over and over and over, you know, kind of just popping up around it, and then you have this main one in the middle. This is just kind of randomly in the main one in the middle. You go and you clear it, and from a distance, again, you have a cool looking repeating pattern that when people get up close, say, oh, it's the same skull over and over and over again, and people think, oh yeah, he computer cut that. And it's like, heck of a lot faster when it comes down to, and these are reusable. By the way, all these stencils that I've been talking about are all completely, I think I mentioned it earlier, all completely solvent proof. You can reuse them. You can use these things. I've actually had the prototypes from my first stencil 6 years ago. We got this one done right here. We still have this sucker masked off. Let's line him up so he's about the same height as this guy. What I mean by same height, let's line his eyes up. He's a smaller skull, but you line the eyes up and people will naturally assume they're at the same level. People go by eyes more than anything else. Let's come in here and airbrush this in. See that? A little bit of that ghosty looking eye looking at you. And then let's hit these lines in here. Now you may wonder, what the heck is this skull? Well, this skull is influenced by a technique I do called the stretched face. This is similar to it in the fact that you can make it look like that if you render it in. I eventually probably will come up with a series of stencils for those stretched faces, but it's so much freehand involved, the stencil itself is almost, you know, not really that viable. I want it really, really dark right there. And you look at it, it almost has a cool effect. It looks like a scratched in skull into something. Let's go ahead and create a shadow, but it looks like it's coming forward. And I'll create a couple extra lines that are softer to kind of blend in with the stenciled lines that are in there already. Extend out the stencil ones, bring in some new ones. You want to blend and tie in your stencil with the existing design. The more I darken it, the more it looks open. Kind of connect some of these to create complete teeth lines. And let's really emphasize that eye socket in there. Now this is kind of equal on both sides as far as lighting goes. I could really emphasize this side, leave this side alone. Let's darken this side up and emphasize the light source on this side. Stencils do not have built-in light sources. You got to figure those out on your own when you're working on something. So when you're doing a design, where is your light source coming from? This side of the skull is darker than the other side because of, hey, the light source. Two separate stencils, two different ways of using it. This one and then coming in and mimicking the design. You could do the same thing with this one, but this one's kind of stylized. These lines give you a little bit of a reference point to make it look like it's stretching out of something. You can see how it would work really well in wood grain. We've done those two stencils right there off of the Evil Horde. We're going to take this guy right here and his three friends, take it to a black panel and do this design in negative. Like I showed earlier, these two work really, really well on a light panel with a dark paint. We're going to go with white and violet over a black panel and do these next to show how one stencil can actually work best on either a negative or a positive background. Gone ahead and prepped out a black panel, scuffed it with a Scotch-Brite pad. I put a little border on it, white border this time so you can see it by comparison to the black border on the white one. Now we're going to work on the second half of this stencil using some white. We're going to do this one skull here. Because I did this more in a negative, the white in the center, I can then come in with some black and tint around it and bring the definition out. I just want to show a difference between using a stencil on a white panel, vice versa using it on a black one. You could use this on a white one as well. I just think it reads better on black. Let's go ahead and tape off these surrounding skulls. Some masking tape here. And we'll tape off the top ones from the bottom. And this guy right here too. And don't forget the overspray factor. Just to be sure, let's go ahead and put a little piece of tape on all four sides. I switched to another gun. This is an Eclipse CS, a little bit more of a medium gun than a detail gun, but sprays the white real good. The house color white we're using actually is a little bit thicker than the other paints. House color white's got 4 times the amount of titanium pigment than other paints out there. They just really grind it very fine. That's how they can cram in that much more pigment. Notice I'm angling the gun again to keep from getting overspray down here. And you may wonder, why isn't he just painted all solid white? Well, I'm actually creating contours and letting the overspray do some of my work. So I hit the highlights in here more because I want it to look like this eye is curving up. It's like this is solid black and that area is curving up in there. I'll go ahead and give it a little bit of white around here, a little bit white under his cheekbone, and hit the center of that horn all the way around. Notice I'm having to press the stencil down because the air is trying to lift it up. If you're doing really delicate work, you can always try and reduce the air pressure down if it's causing a problem. Matter of fact, if you have high air pressure, it'll lift your stencil. I'm working with around 30, 35 psi. I very rarely go above that. Sometimes I go down as low as 25. That's about it right there for that. So you can see here how the white created contours already. So I already have some shading and shadowing and some depth created in this by the way I sprayed the white through the stencil. Now we're going to come in, maybe add a little bit of fire, some smoke coming out of them, and then we'll come in with black and detail and punch this whole design out. Now you see some of the overspray that's in the black around here. I'm just going to come in and wipe that with the rag real lightly. There'll still be a little bit left over from what escaped underneath the stencil, but you want to get the loose stuff up because if otherwise the loose stuff will act like a sponge and get real dry when the clear gets on it. I got my white in here, and let's go ahead and add a little bit of a glow to the eye socket here, maybe do a little bit of a smoky eye thing coming out of there. And we can even come in and maybe do some streaks going away from it. Just kind of give it something a little bit more than just a skull here. And by putting a little bit of this fog around there, I can then come with my black and create a shadow underneath it. Otherwise, you wouldn't see a shadow with black on black. Little highlights here, almost like it's fiery smoke coming out of the eye sockets. And these whole very cartoony exclamation things coming away from it, like there's a glowing light behind it almost. And that's enough white right there. Now I'm going to come with my black and punch out that existing stencil, and we're going to delineate, get rid of some of those stencil lines to make it look like it was fully freehand airbrushed. Got a nice quick release here on my hose so I can switch from one airbrush to another. I'm going back to that HPCH with the micro valve for the detail work, whereas this one's more the medium line work. Having that valve makes it real easy to switch airbrushes and not have to have like 30 hoses come into your station. Now if you want to, you can always come in here and wipe the surface down, but I don't have that much overspray from that. The airbrush a good shake, make sure it's spraying good. And I'm going to come in here and just start doing some very, very tight detailing with this black around the horns. I'm going to delineate those little lines that you saw and at the same time create a shadow underneath them. So you wouldn't have seen that shadow if it wasn't for that underlying white smoke I put in there. Everything has a reason. Now this freehanding on the stencil is very important to learn. You know, you do just stencil work,
it'd look okay. But if you don't learn to freehand your stencils, man, they miss out a little. It doesn't look as good. Remember, it is a tool, but anyone could buy a hammer. It doesn't mean you can build a house just because you happen to have it. Same thing with these. Just because you happen to buy a stencil doesn't mean that you know how to use it. Freehanding is not replaced by stencils. It's supplemented. Stencils are time savers, and they build continuity. See how we're already kind of taking away that stencil-y look? You can add some of those graphic noise, those lines I talked about before into here if you want. Get a little bit extra brow up in here. Let's continue the nose down here. Build up that shadow. Not too much, just a little bit. I don't want to bring up too much of that black up in here because it'll kill the fact that I want the smoke to look like it's coming out of the eye sockets. And re-outline the teeth. Work my way all the way around the teeth. I do jump around a lot when I'm working on these, but I do that to keep the continuity even. And keep shadowing, shadow underneath the cheekbones here, shadow underneath the horns on this side, and let's come in and bring those lines, delineate the lines of that horn in here, the texture. And, as like I said earlier, getting rid of the stencil look. A little bit extra work will make that stencil look as freehand as anyone else, but in half the time. I'm not even going to detail the bottom of the jaw. I'm going to have this thing kind of blend out into that surrounding white that I did earlier. Okay, real dark shadow in the teeth there. Remember how we had the light source more on this side than the other on the other one? The same way we're going to do it here. We're going to create this side darker. And really darken this side up to create more of the illusion of even though the light's coming from behind it kind of with those streaks, I really want it to look like this is more darker on this side. It gives more character, it's more interesting looking. Severe lighting is always more interesting than just straight on lighting. And you can see it, just a little bit of black in here. You can even add a little bit of a contrail, a little bit of shadowing around that smoke so we don't lose it. I want it to look like it's coming out of the eyes. And what if you get too much black in there? Snap off that airbrush, snap on the white airbrush. Much easier than cleaning out the airbrush. And then bingo, we're back to our white, and I can bring it right over that eye socket that I did with the little black on. And it gives it more depth, more illusion of the smoke coming out of the eye socket than just all of a sudden coming out of the top of his head or something. More of a smoky eye look. And you can even come in and add a couple of highlights here and there. The nice thing about doing what I call the push-pull effect, working white, black, little highlights along the peak of the horn here. Peak of this side. Since we darkened up the other side of the skull, we wouldn't need to really brighten up this side. Much cooler than just the stencil look. At the same time, we wouldn't have had this design if it wasn't for that initial stencil. Well, we already did the evil horde here. Now we got the three little evil minions we kind of ignored. So let's center him up right underneath this skull, right here. Again, transparency is nice. You can see right through there, and the tape helps it hold down for me. Now, the way the stencil is cut, with the way the skull is closed off like that, that's more of a skull designed for a white-based piece. But the hat is really kind of open, so I can do some little shading and shadowing in here, make the bells on the end of this jester hat really bright. So what I'm using this white for here is actually just reference to come in later with black. Peel it back and take a look at it. Got that one little jester guy there. Let's put the other one right here. We'll tilt him at a little bit of an angle. And come in and do his tail. Little pitchforks. This is like a cyclopean devil skull, whatever it is. Don't ask me what I was thinking when I did this one. It was kind of like, oh, I have like a 2-inch by 2-inch area to do something in. Evidently just was inspired by something bizarre that day. Oh, and then we got the little king skull. And we're going to do him, line him up the same way, sight, tilt, angle. Stick the tape down, spray this little bugger in here. Now I wouldn't use these as much for murals. I mean, I might add them in there, but they're kind of stylized. They got skull and crossbones, so they're not just piles of skulls. Like, oh, it just happened to be a pile of skulls and one of them has a jester hat on. What these are really good for is to come in and add pearls to your paint, and maybe in the background of a graphic, have these over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, all combined, these 3 different little skulls. And they're kind of different looking, and if people look at them, they'll think, oh, he cut it out of a stencil. Well, that's a lot of work, so you just saved yourself a lot of work by not cutting it out. And you can come in if you want, and you can detail up the inside of the skull with the white, if you feel like it. With pearl, you don't need to do this. But I'm going to show you, I'm going to come in with some black on this design. You say, oh, he's covering up all of his details of the face. Don't worry about it. Because I'm coming in with black anyway, let me bring in those back. And we'll also create a little bit of a weird ring, kind of a halo-y repeating ring thing around them. Just something you can do. It's kind of funky, looks weird. And I make my living doing things that are weird. Add some details to the guy's crown and his hat. With the white all filled in there, like I said, normally you could use these just for background. Let's say you just choose to airbrush these. So some guys want something airbrushed on his cell phone, something that small. You don't just give him a stencil and call it a day. If you had these things stenciled all over a graphical card, where there's thousands of them, the lack of detail actually works. But for just one on a cell phone, let's give them some detail. So this is, we'll pretend this is on a little design. Got my black here, took the tip off for detail. Let's come in and detail this little bell with the black. Not too much. There we go. Maybe a little couple details there. Detail this out here. A couple of shadows underneath. Not too many, just a few. Delineate it just a little bit, just to take away that stencil look from the hat. And then let's come to the outside of the skull, and let's kind of give them, go underneath and cast a little bit of a shadow. Remember where the light source mostly is. The shadow's mostly going to be on that side, but you still have a shadow underneath the teeth. You say, well, I can't see the details all. Trust me, we're going to come with the stencil and we're going to replace those details. Let's do the same thing to this guy. Delineate him out a little bit, not too much. Because remember, we're going to come in with the stencil again. Give him a little bit of a shadow underneath his pitchforks. And the king, he gets something also. With a shadow underneath his teeth, shadow underneath each of his skull and crossbone type thing going on there. And let's detail out that crown. Do some blowouts. Blowouts are when you get real close and you blow too much paint, it looks like little balls. Now if I was doing this on the side of a truck where there's 1,000 of them, I would not be doing this. I just leave it the way it was and call it a day. Let's line the stencil back up. Just like we had it before. If you can see where you had it before, that's even better. I can see right there. And we'll bring back his nose. Look at that. And don't forget the king. He's easier because we can line up his crown much better. There we go. Right there, I believe. Hit his nose, hit his eye. Don't hit the other areas because it'll mess up your airbrush you did earlier. There you go. Got his eyes back. So you can get some nice little detailed skulls in here just by doing the push-pull method of black, white, black and using a stencil with a little bit of freehand. Next one in this series we're going to play with is called Petting Zoo. Yes, it is a kind of a play on words, but the last kind of animals you like to pet here. We've got a combination of them. We have something that looks like a prehistoric bird right here. I think it's actually a, I found it in a bird book. We also have a snake. Some people think it's a dragon or something. It's actually a snake skeleton, a little bit stylized. It doesn't come down to a tail. You can actually continue these bones over and over again and make it weave around on a tank. Threw in a couple of stylized piranha skeleton fish here, type of antelope or some kind of character with horns, and then just I had some space, threw in a couple of arrowheads to go with the whole archaeological dig theme. This works really good on white or black. We're going to do it on black since we got the black board up here. Plus you can have some fun with this on black since you're using white for the main element and it gives that whole white bone look. This is really cool if you want to go over a sandy area or like an area where you like can flick some paint on to make it look like dirt, and then come in and do this with white and then kind of shade and shadow around it. It looks like fossils. I've had guys use these to create create like graphics that look like fossils embedded in the car itself. Even had someone use this in a museum around a border trim, look like fossils around the border trim of the museum building on the inside. A lot of neat little uses for this one right here. We are thinking to come up with another version of this later on with more things that you don't want to pet. So let's go ahead and mask this off. We got to mask off a couple of the elements so we don't get overspray on it, and we'll get right to spraying. Okay, first thing I'm going to spray on this bad boy is going to be the snake. I kind of dig him. He's my favorite. He's like, I started him out and then everything else was like, well, let's fill in the rest of the space. And it looks like I haphazardly put the tape around there. I really didn't. I'm focusing just on the skeleton. Nope, have that little bottom down there. Let's make sure I don't have that oversprayed. That way I'm just going to be spraying this, and then I'll just move the tape around as we go to spray the rest of the petting zoo. Okay, let's go ahead and put the snake over in this corner right here. We'll kind of just haphazardly fill this space up. Again, nice thing about that taping, besides overspray control, I am going to do a little bit of shading and shadowing in the skull. Well, not much because the areas are so small. I want to make sure the teeth get seen really well, so I'm really going to hit the teeth probably twice, because this paint on this powder coated surface will absorb in. White will absorb into other colors as well. And then I come down and hit each of these bones individually first. I'll show you what I mean by first. Put my hand right here to keep the overspray from getting through there, because I don't really want to bend my hand the other direction to aim it in the other direction. Now it's okay. Each of these bones get hit once. One, or actually there's like 2 passes I'm doing on each bone. Then we're going to come in and hit them one more time, but see I'm doing a bar. Say, why is he just going like this? Well, I'm creating a highlight. It'll look like there's a highlight that's done on each one of these bones. In actuality, it's just a light bar. Now let's see if I have any overspray going on. I may have a little bit here and there. Not bad. What you see here is what popped up underneath. See, it can wipe off right there. Let's say I want to continue the snake around. I'm not going to continue it too much. Make sure the stencil's dry before you place it back on there. I've done that numerous times, where you turn the stencil around, next thing you know, wet paint. If you're going to be working over a large area and you're going to be going back and forth with one stencil, to save time, buy 2. Yeah, that's a shameless plug and marketing employee, but honestly, if you have 2 stencils, like having 2 airbrushes, a lot easier to go back and forth without hair drying or wiping off the stencil. Then, once you turn it around backwards, plus if it's a clean stencil, you can see through it much better. I can then come in, figure out where, see that one? That bone looks very similar to that one, which means I can come in, let's go down to this one here, and I can lay this bone in, make sure that I've got a good continuity with the way that it's lying, and I can start spraying this one. Now I'm going to have to hold it down a little bit more. Why? Well, the tape's backwards. My tape's not helping me anymore. And let's fog this down. We'll just have them blend away to nothing. You lift that up and see how by going back and forth and changing angles, you could have this snake just weave around your entire tank. Now at this point, we can come in and we can add a little bit of smoke or something, or if you some people say it's a dragon, add some horns to it, make some smoke coming out of it. Or you can just come in and just very lightly do a little fog around it to give it some, when I come in with the black, I want to be able to see a little bit of shadowing coming in. And we'll give it some smoke. Okay, it's a really ticked off snake. The snake just finished chain smoking a pack of Pall Malls. There we go. Again, you could use this as a pearl effect in the background and stuff, or even an undercoating effect. You go over silver with this in black and then candy over it. It looks really crazy at different angles. It'll come and go like a ghost image. Let's come in with our black now and delineate it and add some shades and shadows to it. Come in and hit the eye a little bit and this little area behind here. The way I designed this stencil, the little lines that are holding the stencil together actually look like cracks, so you can work that. Turn them into cracks. The nostrils in the front. Give a couple little dagger strokes for the teeth. Little shadows underneath each of the teeth. Not too much work. If I was doing this in a pearl, again, I would not be doing this much work. I'd leave it alone. But sometimes you may want to do this real detailed. Let's say you're doing a briefcase for someone. Here's an idea, one of those aluminum 0 Halliburton cases. I used to do all the paint work on those. And we used to do all kinds of different stuff. Let's say one guy wants to look like a fossil. I did a computer case once with one of these that the guy was making a joke about computers being dinosaurs. So we'd made this whole computer tower look like a bunch of fossils. And we had all kinds of, besides dinosaurs, we also had other computers, mouses, and whatever embedded in the fossils. See how just a little bit of that black makes a huge difference. in the way this thing looks. And before you may have thought, why do you fog that stupid white everywhere? That stupid white is the background, otherwise you wouldn't see that black. You could have this wrapped around your entire design, even going back over itself and cause other shadows. Really, whatever you want to do with it. You can even have a double-headed snake or multiple heads throughout it. Really a bitchin' idea for Harley tanks, and excellent size for helmets as well. Flip-flop both sides for the skull looking forward. Really, whatever you want to do, like any of the stencils, up to your own imagination. Okay, I've already masked off the rest of this area. We're going to do that bird head. I'm going to place him right up here, kind of be in the same position as the snake, kind of. And much the same as the snake, we're going to hit it with the white first to contour it, and we got a vertebrae going on here from the bird. Yeah, it's not a very accurate bird vertebrae, but I had some spare space to throw in there. Plus, I'll show you something we can do with it. It's kind of fun. Again, I'm not spraying the whole thing solid. I'm highlighting the centers. Press that down real good. And letting the shadows take care of the rest. So you could come in at this point and you could bring in the vertebrae and just keep on going around with it. With something in the middle or whatever. Or I could have switched this around and had to just kind of curve around. Anytime you see a repeating element in my stencils, you can use it over and over and over again. Let's do that antelope looking character right below it. I kind of like this guy. We got those arrowheads. Afraid I'm going to get some overspray on those, so I just peeled off a piece of tape. Don't waste tape, just take out some stuff you're already using and just stick it on here for now, just to cover up those arrowheads. Holding this antelope down, or whatever he is. Just because I drew him doesn't mean I know what the hell he is. See all this overspray everywhere? Let's get this a real good wipe down, let it dry for about a second, and then we'll come in and fog in some more white, and then we'll detail it with our black. Let's go ahead and we'll just do a, remember I had that little circular thing going on there? Let's mimic that again over here on the antelope guy. And then as far as this, we'll just do a little smoky haze around the bird. Again, this is for our shade and shadowing to make it punch out. If it was just going to be done as a stencil with pearls, not necessary. Switch over our airbrush to our black. Bring in some dark delineation. Bird skulls are kind of funky because they're mostly held together by cartilage. So what few bones are actually there don't look a lot like the bird. And let's kind of shade and shadow this vertebrae. And the jaw. We can cast a long shadow underneath the jaw because it's open. Let's separate that beak in the front part here. See how just a little bit of airbrushing takes away that whole stencil look. Redelineate these. Remember, you're only one color away from a repair when you're working with a monochromatic system. When you're doing the push-pull, the black-white thing. One color away from repair. Makes you feel really good about it. I've noticed that most mistakes that people make are because they're afraid of making a mistake. Sounds kind of ironic. You're so afraid of making a mistake, you jack everything up. And just keep on delineating with this one. I'm going to bring those lines all the way across on this one. I kind of hinted at it anyway, the way I did it. But again, because it's a stencil, if I'd drawn it all the way out, the stencil would have fallen into about 1,000 pieces when you picked it up. I encourage you to actually try and draw your own stencils. Now, you know, the guys at Art Tool are screaming, no, buy ours. No, I'm serious. The more you draw stencils, the better understanding you have of detail, of what's called the implied line of a character. Some things don't seem to have a line. Well, when you're drawing a stencil, you better figure out a line, otherwise you're not going to have a stencil. So the more you understand the whole art of the line, or the theory of encompassing the line within a design, the better you'll have an understanding of the design itself. So design your own stencils. You may find out you're pretty dang good at them, in which case, call up Art Tool, send it in. Deborah Mahan has been working with me for a number of years. Never really said anything. She has this killer pinup she was doing. I said, you should make a stencil out of that. And she did, and I swear that stencil is going to probably outsell my Skullmaster. That thing's killer. I'm going to make a couple streaks coming down here, like it's real old and thrashed. There's like slime or seaweed, or seaweed from the sea antelope. Just stuff hanging down, kind of gives it a creepy look to it. I'm not going to come in with any highlights and punch those out. That looks fine the way it is. Real nice and subdued, has a kind of creepy look to it. And again, where's a stencil? You hit it with the delineation and with your airbrushing. I got my piranhas. They're not going to take a lot. They're kind of small. These things are perfect for like having a, well, it's a school of piranhas in your flames swimming around. Let's put this one big one. He fits real nicely right in here. Again, let's hold it down, spray. Try and delineate a little bit in there by creating a little bit of contours in it. The individual bones, nah, but the tail, you can make it a center brighter. Make the spine right down the middle the brightest. Put a little light bar on on those areas, especially on the fin, right there. And then let's put the other guy. We'll put him up in here. These come in pretty easy. Now, if I was spraying pearl, I would just hit it, hammer the whole dang thing, and be done with it. But when you're spraying like a color, it looks a little bit better than if you just hammered it in there. And we got the little bitty guy. I don't know what the heck this guy is. He's basically like, there's an inch in the corner. Put a fish here. Okay. Well, I got a little bit of overspray there. Luckily, it'll wipe off. And you can even do some really faint ones in the background. I do them really, really faint, hardly even notice them. And then kind of continue that smoke theme to cover up my overspray. At the same time, you want to be able to delineate these things out pretty good. Need a little bit of that smoke to help out with that delineation. And then we'll snap out of our white, go right to our base coat, black. And let's unscrew the cap again on this bad boy so we can get some serious detail. Nuki fish, or whatever you want to call them. Nuki dog for all the surfers at Pismo know what I'm talking about. The 2 surfers in Pismo that'll buy these stencils now feel like they're part of the game. There we go. When could you use these things? You can use these things all over the place. This could be part of the fossil thing you're doing. If you have a little fossil thing, these are all fossils. Or look like it. Some have more character than others. Most fossils are kind of boring looking. It's not like deposed, you know. Like, hold that look for eternity, right now. There. I'll freeze it for about a millennium. Yeah, there's a nice, like, realistic look to it. Take away that stencil effect. Let's go over here to the psychotic looking one. This is more like the Tim Burton fish. Actually, it's kind of an angler fish almost, missing the light bulb. And you know something? I'm going to create a little light bulb for the anglerfish guy. They say, oh, that's black. Let's come back in with some white. There you go. An evil glowing eye for the anglerfish. Let's give him a spine. He didn't have one. There we go. Our final stencil in this series, this one's called Voodoo. This one is really great for fill-ins. I very rarely, actually I probably never use this one for actual like rendering of murals. It's fill-ins, in other words, just background effects and graphics. And what it really is, I gave the name Voodoo because it has like kind of like that Voodoo, Santeria, Della de Morte type look out of Mexico, which is real stylized type skeletons, skulls and bones, almost looks like cave painting type stuff. To sum it up, yes, I was influenced by Oingo Boingo a lot growing up. So I had different versions of different things that were all over the album covers that I kind of modified for this one stencil. And it gives you some cool looks, cool things you can play around with. I'm just going to show you some examples of these on here, again using the white on the black because it really stands out the best. These are excellent for pearls inside of flames, or even if you just have something going on in the background. I put these inside of realistic fire, just kind of floating around. Fun design, fun stencil, even seeing these things used in background patterns on clothing. That exact copy of this where someone actually took it and made a print out of it somewhere overseas. So great fill-in stencil and pretty much a pure stencil, something that doesn't require a lot of freehand work. And I'm going to lightly fog. I don't want to hit these too heavy. Maybe a little bit brighter in the center of the skull, but let the overspray do your work for you. One man's overspray is another man's gradated fade. So we got some cool skulls going on. Then let's rotate it around a bit so it's not boring. We need them all going the same direction. And let's bring up some more over on this side. See how these are, the way these are set up is they're so random. As long as you rotate and spin and change some of your angle of attack, people have a hard time telling that it was actually a stencil. Look like it just kind of goes on and on right there. You can blend them out slowly but surely on the sides. Even a little bit overlapping is not going to kill it. Just a little bit of overlap in there, doesn't hurt anything. There's a couple in there. Put a little smoke back in behind this guy. Why? Hey, we're going to delineate him a little bit. We're going to punch him out using some black, just to make him stand out away from this wallpaper we created. A little bit of black behind here. Not a lot. I like keeping that real sketchy look that these have through the stencil. The cool thing about this style, this voodoo style, this real minimalistic, almost like a tribal or Haitian type of skull design, it doesn't have a lot of detail. You start creating too many details and they don't look real anymore. So I want to keep that blocky tooth look. I'm just creating a three-dimensional image of it. So it looks like actually one of the sculptures you might see. And a pitchfork. Put a little shadow underneath the pitchfork, like it's floating above everything up here. So it just kind of stands out real nicely when you do just a little bit of airbrushing on that. And you could do these in different colors. This could be done like in a pearlescent effect in the background. Up close, they look like skulls or whatever you want them to be, but from a distance, they still read well, which is very important in automotive because you got people that see things from a distance and you want to create an interest where they're like, what is that? And they get close and they're like, oh yeah, skulls. And man, this would take you forever to cut out. So hence, you know, stencils are definitely worth the time and the money investment. Okay, I got this sucker masked off, this little oingo boingo looking dude with some flames around him. And let's go ahead and use just the white. I'm not gonna use any black on this guy. I want to keep him real stencily looking. So, but what I will probably do is come in and really brighten that center of that eye out. And I will still like use an undulating technique to kind of create just something more than just a spray can job on this stencil. Just really hitting the center of the flame, not the whole thing, the center. Let the overspray do my work for me. The center of his horn right there. Center of the eye, center of the eye. Cheekbone there, center of the flame, center of the flame. And then when you unmask it, you have a really cool undulation to it. It's still stencily, but that's actually looks good for that design. This one right here is kind of similar to it. And then what I'm going to do will be kind of different. You say, oh, wait about all those little exclamation marks. Well, just wait. I'm going to do some, remember that airbrushing we did in the past, going around it to create that fog? There's one guy we left out here. It's a little dog. Kind of a weird Della de Morte type dog. You do this one over and over again, almost like a wallpaper theme. I don't know if people would be too thrilled about having to, look at our children's wallpaper. It's dead dogs. Yeah, that works. Get his eyes going. He's got some looks like glasses going on here because the way I designed this one, the way the stencil was. I just go with the flow on it. Give him a little more character than he already has, which isn't much. Skulls don't have a lot of character. You got to give them character. Character is usually reserved for things that have skin. And keep on dagger stroking, dagger stroking. And keep on shadowing around them. See, we're giving all kinds of depth. Extend up those dagger strokes there. Then, when I come in with this part again, I'll lay it back on. Then I can come in and hammer these guys all the way around the edge, and you'll see how, because of that white overspray we put in there, all of a sudden we have that done in the negative space. Let's create a little bit of a fog, a little bit of a glow around homeboy over here. Kind of makes him the center of attention, and that glow kind of fades out over these skulls. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these, but done in black, in here. Have them overlap slightly. It's kind of cool. You could do this with two different kinds of pearls on an actual car. Same stencil. Overlapping in, you have a white version of the stencil, then a black version coming in together. You can combine this with colors. These down here are more of a background effect or a pattern effect. But again, just like the other stencils, you can modify them and play with them with freehanding and make them look really a lot better than they come right out of the can.
In this video, we've covered all the applications of the stencils in Cursive Skullmaster, not just standard spraying, but also freehand use to create complex designs. Hope you enjoyed this video. To keep up on future techniques and stencils, look for my column, Mastering Skullmaster in Airbrush Action magazine. I'm Kreg Fraser, and I'll see you next time.